Have you ever wondered why, even when you decide to stop, you always return to the same cycle? Why does that urge, which should be merely biological, become such a powerful force that dominates your thoughts, your decisions, your life force? The answer isn't where you think it is. It's not in guilt, it's not in repression, it's not in the empty moralism that society has sold you. The answer lies in something that Napoleon Hill discovered decades ago and that few have dared to reveal. Sex is not just a bodily function. It's the very essence of the creative force that moves the universe within you. But here's the paradox that destroys most men. The more you try to control this energy by ignoring its true nature, the more it controls you. The more you fight against it as if it were your enemy, the more it becomes your prison. And the more you waste it on empty pleasures and compulsive behaviors, the more it slips away like water through your fingers, taking with it your strength, your clarity, your magnetism, your ability to create the life you truly desire. Napoleon Hill wasn't a moralist. He was an observer of human nature, a decoder of the patterns that separate successful men from unsuccessful men. And one of the most revolutionary discoveries of his research was this: all the great achievers in history had something in common. They had learned to transmute their sexual energy into creative power, into unwavering focus, into personal magnetism that attracted opportunities, people, and resources, like a magnet. They didn't deny sex. They understood it as the most powerful force in human nature and learned to channel that energy toward purposes that transcended momentary pleasure. They discovered that what you do with your sexual energy determines not only your financial success, but your ability to influence, to create, to become the most powerful version of yourself. But let's start at the beginning, because the journey of transformation always begins with the raw truth about where you are now. Look at your life at this moment. How many times have you promised yourself you were going to stop? How many times have you felt you were in control, only to discover it was an illusion? How many times have you wasted energy that could have been used to build something great, to focus on your goals, to develop your skills? Modern society has created a perfect trap. On one hand, it hypersexualizes everything. Every advertisement, every movie, every social media platform is designed to awaken your sexual drive. On the other hand, it teaches you that this drive is something you should be ashamed of, something that should be repressed, denied, hidden. It's like setting your house on fire and then giving you a leaky hose to put it out. Napoleon Hill saw through this illusion. He realized that sexual energy is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. It's simply the most powerful life force that exists within you. What determines whether it will be your destruction or your elevation is one thing: awareness. Awareness of your true nature, awareness of your patterns, awareness of how to redirect it toward purposes that expand your life instead of contracting it. Imagine for a moment that you discovered you possess an unlimited source of energy within you, a source that can fuel any project, any dream, any ambition. But there's a problem. You've never learned how to use it. On the contrary, you've been conditioned to waste it on momentary escapes that leave you emptier, weaker, and more disconnected from your true power each time. That's what's happening with your sexual energy. Every time you waste it on compulsive masturbation, pornography, fantasies that lead nowhere, you're literally draining the force that could transform your life. You're turning gold into lead, power into impotence, clarity into confusion. But what does it really mean to transmute sexual energy? Let's go beyond vague words and dive into the real alchemy that Napoleon Hill discovered. Transmutation is not repression. Repression is pushing the energy down, denying it, fighting against it. Transmutation is acknowledging this energy, respecting it, and then consciously redirecting it to higher channels. When you feel the sexual urge, instead of automatically seeking relief through means that drain your energy, you stop. You recognize that this is the life force of creation manifesting through you. You ask, how can I use this energy to create something that truly matters? How can I channel this intensity into my work, my projects, my relationships? That's the difference between a man who is a slave to his impulses and a man who is master of his energy. The slave sees the urge and immediately seeks gratification. The master sees the urge and asks, what is this telling me? What powerful energy is available to me at this moment? How can I use it to move forward toward my goals? Napoleon Hill discovered that the most successful men rarely dissipated their sexual energy impulsively. They understood that this energy was their premium fuel, their source of personal power, their ability to influence and create. They treated it as a precious resource, not something to be wasted. And here's something that will shock you. Many of these men were more sexually attractive, more magnetic, more charismatic, precisely because they didn't waste their sexual energy. They conserved it, accumulated it, refined it. And this conserved energy radiated through their presence, their gaze, their voice, their confidence. Have you ever met someone who has this magnetic quality? That presence that attracts attention, effortlessly. That confidence that seems to come from an inexhaustible source, that's transmuted sexual energy in action. It's what happens when you stop leaking power and begin to consciously accumulate it. But let's delve deeper, because sexual transmutation isn't just about conserving energy. It's about completely transforming your relationship with desire, with power, with your own masculinity. It's about understanding that you have a choice that most men never realize they have. At every moment, you're choosing between two versions of yourself. One version that's controlled by impulses, that seeks immediate gratification, that drains energy in fleeting pleasures. And another version that's conscious, that channels energy towards higher purposes, that builds power instead of squandering it. The first version is what Napoleon Hill called the average man, the one who's a slave to his passions, who makes impulse-driven decisions, who never develops true self-mastery. The second version is what he called the successful man, the one who's learned to be the master of his energies, who consciously uses all available resources to create the life he desires. And here's the truth that can transform your life. Sexual energy is the key that determines which of these versions you become. Because if you can't master the most powerful force within you, how can you expect to master any other area of your life? Think about it for a moment. If you can't control when and how you express your sexuality, if you're controlled by impulses you don't even fully understand, how can you expect to have control over your work habits, your relationships, your finances, your long-term goals? Napoleon Hill saw this connection clearly. He realized that sexual self-mastery was the foundation of every other kind of success. Not because sex is bad, but because learning to consciously direct your sexual energy teaches you to consciously direct any energy. It's like learning to drive a race car. When you master the most powerful vehicle, driving any other car becomes easy. When you master the most powerful force within you, your sexual energy, mastering any other force becomes possible. But here's where most men get lost. They believe that mastering sexual energy means denying or suppressing it. They believe they must fight their impulses as if they were enemies. This approach not only fails, but usually makes the situation worse. True sexual transmutation isn't about denying your masculine nature. It's about elevating your masculine nature to its highest potential. It's about transforming impulse into intention, compulsion into creativity, desire into directed power. When you stop wasting sexual energy on fleeting escapes, something extraordinary happens. That energy doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes mental clarity. It becomes intense focus. It becomes personal magnetism. It becomes the courage to take risks, the persistence to overcome obstacles, the creativity to find solutions. Napoleon Hill documented this in hundreds of cases. Men who learned to transmute their sexual energy reported dramatic increases in their ability to concentrate, in their physical energy, in their ability to influence other people. They became more creative, more courageous, more capable of visualizing and manifesting their goals. But let's move beyond theory and dive into the actual practice. How exactly do you do this transmutation? How do you transform impulse into directed power? First, you must understand that sexual energy isn't just about sex. It's about life force, about creativity, about personal power. When you feel a sexual impulse, you're feeling the force of creation moving through you. The question is, will you squander this force on momentary gratification, or will you use it to create something lasting? Second, you must develop awareness of your patterns. When do you feel sexual impulses? What triggers them? How do you usually respond? What emotions are behind these impulses? Often we discover that sexual compulsion is actually an escape from other emotions: boredom, anxiety, loneliness, frustration. Third, you must learn to recognize sexual energy as a neutral force that can be directed. When you feel the impulse, instead of automatically seeking gratification, you stop and ask, how can I use this energy for something that truly matters? Fourth, you must develop alternative channels for this energy. Intense physical exercise, creative work, challenging projects, learning new skills. You must create outlets for your energy that elevate it instead of draining it. Fifth, you must understand that this is a process, not an event. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. It's about making conscious choices more and more frequently until it becomes your automatic nature. But here's something Napoleon Hill discovered that's absolutely crucial. Sexual transmutation isn't just an individual practice. It profoundly affects how you relate to other people, especially women. A man who squanders his sexual energy on compulsions and fantasies usually has relationships based on neediness, on seeking validation, on unbalanced power dynamics. He sees women through the lens of his own drained energy, of his own sense of emptiness. A man who has learned to transmute his sexual energy relates to women from a position of power, not neediness. He doesn't seek validation through sex. He offers presence, strength, protection. He becomes magnetic because he possesses something that most men don't: refined and conscious sexual energy. This doesn't mean he doesn't have sex or that he doesn't appreciate physical intimacy. It means that when he has sex, it's from a position of abundance, not scarcity. It's an expression of power, not an escape from impotence. And here's something that will completely transform your perspective. Women are naturally attracted to men who possess transmuted sexual energy. They can sense it instinctively. It's as if there's a different frequency that these men emit, a frequency of power, of presence, of refined masculinity. Napoleon Hill observed that the most successful men in business and leadership also tended to be more attractive to women, not because of their wealth or status, but because of their presence. They possessed a magnetic quality that stemmed from mastering their inner energies. But let's delve deeper into this inner alchemy, because sexual transmutation touches something far more profound than techniques or strategies. It touches the very core of your masculine identity, your relationship with power, your ability to create and manifest your vision in the world. When you're a slave to sexual impulses, you're essentially handing over your power to external forces. You're saying, I can't control this. I can't choose when and how to express my sexuality. You're positioning yourself as a victim of your own biology. When you learn to consciously direct your sexual energy, you're reclaiming your power as a conscious creator. You're saying, I choose when, how, and where to express this energy. I'm the master of my life force. This shift in perspective, from victim to creator, is fundamental to all types of success. Because if you can't be a conscious creator of the most powerful force within you, how can you be a conscious creator of anything else? Napoleon Hill saw this connection clearly. He realized that sexual self-mastery was the first step to self-mastery in all other areas. It was the foundation upon which all other types of power were built. And here's something that will shock you. Most men never become truly successful because they never learn this foundation. They may develop skills, accumulate knowledge, work hard, but without the foundation of sexual self-mastery, they never develop the kind of personal power that creates lasting success. They may have periods of success, but they are inconsistent, unstable, because the foundation, the mastery of the most powerful life force, is absent. It's like trying to build a skyscraper on quicksand. Let's explore this more deeply. What actually happens when you stop wasting sexual energy? What's the real alchemy that occurs within you? First, you develop what Napoleon Hill called intense power of concentration. When you stop draining energy in fleeting escapes, that energy accumulates and can be directed to laser-like focus on your goals. You discover you can work for longer periods with more intensity, with more creativity. Second, you develop personal magnetism. This isn't a vague metaphor. It's something other people instinctively feel. When you conserve and refine sexual energy, You emit a different frequency. You become more interesting, more attractive, more influential. Third, you develop courage and determination. Conserved sexual energy transforms into strength to face challenges, to take risks, to persevere when others give up. You become bolder because you have an internal power source you can access when needed. Fourth, you develop enhanced creativity. Sexual energy is nature's creative force. When you stop wasting it, it transforms into the ability to create solutions, to see opportunities where others see problems, to innovate and invent. Fifth, you develop powerful presence. You walk into a room and people notice. You speak and people listen. You have a quality that's hard to define but impossible to ignore. But here's what's most important. You develop something Napoleon Hill considered essential for all lasting success. Genuine self-confidence based on real self-mastery. Not confidence based on external success that can be lost, but confidence based on internal mastery that no one can take from you. That's the difference between true power and false power. False power depends on external circumstances, money, status, the approval of others. True power comes from internal mastery, the ability to consciously direct your energies, emotions, and actions. And here's the truth few men understand. True power attracts external power. When you develop internal mastery, external opportunities naturally gravitate toward you. People want to work with you, invest in you, follow you. This isn't mysticism, it's practical psychology. When you emit the frequency of someone who has control over their inner energies, you attract people and situations that recognize and respect that quality. Napoleon Hill studied hundreds of successful people and discovered this pattern repeatedly. The most successful weren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They were the ones who had developed the greatest degree of self-mastery, beginning with mastery over their sexual energy. But let's be honest about the challenges you'll face on this journey. Modern society is structured to drain your sexual energy. You're constantly bombarded with images, messages, and opportunities that arouse sexual impulses. It's like trying to diet in a chocolate factory. Furthermore, you've likely developed deep neurological patterns over years of automatic responses to sexual impulses. Your brain is literally programmed to seek immediate sexual gratification when certain triggers are activated. Changing these patterns requires something most men aren't willing to develop: conscious and persistent discipline. Not discipline based on denial or repression, but discipline based on understanding and conscious redirection. Here's how Napoleon Hill saw it. Discipline isn't punishment, it's training. You're training yourself to consciously utilize the most powerful force within you. It's like training to be an elite athlete. It requires consistent practice, but the results are extraordinary. And here's something crucial you must understand. You're not doing this to be moral or good in the conventional sense. You're doing this to be powerful, effective, magnetic. You're doing this because you've discovered that wasting sexual energy is literally wasting your potential for success. This completely changes your motivation. You're not denying yourself pleasure. You're choosing greater, more lasting pleasures. You're trading momentary gratification for lasting power. But let's explore something few discuss: the spiritual dimension of sexual transmutation. Napoleon Hill, though a practical, results-oriented man, recognized that sexual energy was more than just biological force. It was a spiritual force, a connection to the universe's creative power. When you learn to consciously direct your sexual energy, you're not just optimizing your biology. You're aligning yourself with universal creative forces. You're becoming a conscious channel for the force that creates worlds. This may sound mystical, but the results are extremely practical. Men who learn to transmute sexual energy often report experiences they describe as divine inspiration, enhanced intuition, increased synchronicities. They begin to access levels of creativity and insight they didn't know they possessed. They begin to attract opportunities and resources in ways that seem almost magical. They begin to operate from a level of power that transcends what's normally considered possible. Napoleon Hill called this infinite intelligence, the ability to access wisdom and power beyond what your conscious mind can normally achieve. And he believed that sexual transmutation was one of the most powerful keys to accessing this level of awareness. But here's what's most important. This isn't an abstract philosophy you study, it's a concrete practice you live. Every time you consciously choose to direct your sexual energy instead of wasting it, you're practicing real alchemy. You're literally turning lead into gold, impulse into power, compulsion into creativity. You're becoming a magician in the truest sense of the word, someone who consciously works with natural forces to create desired changes. And here's something that will inspire you. You don't need to be perfect at this practice to see dramatic results. You simply need to be consistent. Every time you choose transmutation over dissipation, you're building power. Every time you choose consciousness over compulsion, you're becoming more free. Napoleon Hill found that progress in this area tends to be exponential, not linear. In the beginning, it may seem like you're making little progress, but as you develop strength and skill, the results accumulate rapidly. It's like pushing a large boulder uphill. At first, it takes tremendous effort just to move the boulder a few inches. But once you build momentum, the boulder starts to move more easily, and eventually, you can move mountains. Let's now explore how this transmutation specifically affects different areas of your life. Because Napoleon Hill wasn't interested in abstract philosophy, he was interested in practical, measurable results. In your business and career, you'll find you have access to levels of energy and focus you didn't know you possessed. Projects that once seemed impossible become exciting challenges. You develop the ability to work in a state of flow for extended periods, producing results of exceptional quality. You also develop a presence and magnetism that make other people want to work with you, follow you, invest in you. Clients, colleagues, and superiors begin to see you as someone special, someone who possesses qualities that are rare and valuable. In your relationships, you become a man who offers value instead of seeking validation. You relate to people from a position of abundance, not scarcity. This makes you infinitely more attractive and respected. You'll find that women respond to you differently. They instinctively sense that you possess something most men don't, refined and powerful. Masculine energy. You become the kind of man women describe as having something special. In your health and physical energy, you'll experience a vitality you probably haven't felt in years. Conserved and transmuted sexual energy becomes enhanced physical energy, increased mental clarity, strengthened emotional resilience. In your spiritual life and personal growth, you'll begin to access levels of awareness and insight that were previously inaccessible. You'll develop enhanced intuition, expanded creativity, a deeper connection to your purpose and potential. But here's what's most important. You'll develop something Napoleon Hill considered more valuable than any material wealth: true self-control. You'll become the master of yourself instead of being a slave to impulses. And here's a profound truth few understand. When you become the master of yourself, you naturally become a leader of others. Leadership isn't about titles or positions. It's about the ability to consciously direct energy and action to create desired results. When you demonstrate this ability in relation to yourself, others naturally want to follow your lead. They recognize that you possess something they want: true power, true control, true freedom. Napoleon Hill observed that all the great leaders in history possessed this quality. They had learned to master their inner energies before trying to master anything external. They understood that the external realm is always a reflection of the internal realm. Let's now explore the specific pitfalls you should avoid on this journey. Because Napoleon Hill was a careful observer, not only of success but also of the causes of failure. The first pitfall is the all-or-nothing approach. Many men believe they must achieve immediate perfection, or they are total failures. They make progress for a few weeks or months, then have a slip-up and give up entirely. Napoleon Hill understood that real progress is always a process, not an event. You're building new neurological pathways, developing new mental strength, creating new habits. This takes time and requires patience with yourself. The second pitfall is repression instead of transmutation. Some men try to simply deny or repress their sexual impulses. This not only fails, but often creates additional psychological problems. True transmutation acknowledges and honors sexual energy as a powerful, positive force, then consciously redirects it into higher channels. You're not denying your masculine nature, you're elevating it. The third pitfall is a lack of alternative outlets. If you simply stop wasting sexual energy without creating conscious outlets for that energy, it can build up in ways that cause tension and frustration. You must develop practices that allow sexual energy to be transformed into other forms of creative expression: physical exercise, creative work, challenging projects, intense learning. The fourth pitfall is isolation. Many men try to make this transformation alone without support or guidance. Napoleon Hill stressed the importance of associating with other men who share similar values and growth goals. Find or create a group of men committed to personal growth and self-mastery. Having the support and accountability of other men who understand your journey is invaluable. The fifth pitfall is losing sight of the bigger goal. You're not doing this to be good or to follow external moral rules. You're doing this to become powerful, effective, free. Always keep in mind the practical benefits you're creating. Now let's dive into Napoleon Hill's perspective on how this transformation affects your ability to attract and create wealth. Because he discovered a direct connection between sexual transmutation and financial success. Men who waste sexual energy tend to have scattered thought patterns, reduced physical energy, and lack the persistence needed to build lasting wealth. They are easily distracted, quickly discouraged, and frequently sabotage their own efforts. Men who learn to transmute sexual energy develop laser focus, abundant energy, and unshakable persistence. They can maintain intense concentration for extended periods, persevere through obstacles that defeat others, and maintain a clear vision of their long-term goals. Furthermore, they develop a personal magnetism that attracts opportunities, resources, and people who can help them achieve financial success. They become the kind of person others want to do business with, invest in, or associate with. Napoleon Hill documented case after case of men who experienced dramatic increases in their income and wealth after learning to transmute sexual energy. Not because transmutation is magic, but because it unleashes and focuses energies that were previously wasted. Think about it. If you have a limited energy source and you're constantly draining that energy on activities that don't produce value, how much is left for activities that create wealth? Very little. But when you stop draining energy and begin consciously directing it toward productive activities, you dramatically multiply your ability to create value, to solve problems, to serve others in ways that are financially rewarded. Here's something specific Napoleon Hill observed. Men who practice sexual transmutation tend to have far more physical and mental energy available for work. They can maintain high productivity for longer periods without fatigue. They also tend to have clearer and more creative thinking. The conserved and refined sexual energy fuels higher thought processes, leading to better ideas, more innovative solutions, and deeper insights. Let's now explore how this practice affects your ability to influence and lead other people. Because Napoleon Hill discovered that the personal magnetism derived from sexual transmutation is one of the most powerful forms of influence. When you conserve and refine sexual energy, you develop a quality that's hard to define but impossible to ignore. People are naturally drawn to you. They want to be around you, hear what you have to say, follow your lead. This isn't superficial charisma or manipulative charm. It's genuine power based on real inner mastery. People instinctively sense that you possess something they want: true control, directed energy, clear purpose. Napoleon Hill called this magnetic personality. He observed that all great leaders possessed this quality and that it always stemmed from some form of sexual energy transmutation. They had learned to convert impulse into presence, desire into directed power. But here's something crucial you must understand. This influence comes with responsibility. When you develop genuine power, you have the choice to use it to uplift others or to manipulate them. Napoleon Hill stressed that true power always serves a purpose greater than personal gratification. Men who use transmuted sexual energy to manipulate or control others eventually destroy their own power. The universe has a way of balancing these things. Genuine power flows when it's used to create value, to serve, to uplift. This brings us to a deeper dimension of sexual transmutation, its connection to life purpose. Napoleon Hill discovered that men who learn to transmute sexual energy often experience dramatic clarity about their life mission, their unique purpose in the world. This makes sense when you understand that sexual energy is the fundamental creative force. When you stop wasting it on fleeting escapes and begin consciously refining it, you naturally connect with your deepest creative impulses. You begin to realize that you have something unique to contribute, something only you can create or express. You develop what Napoleon Hill called purpose definition, a clear and passionate direction for your life. And here's something extraordinary. When you combine transmuted sexual energy with clear purpose, you become virtually unstoppable. You have the energy to persevere through any obstacle and the direction to apply that energy effectively. Let's now explore the deeper psychological dimension of this transformation. Because sexual transmutation isn't just about energy, it's about identity, about who you become when you stop being a slave to impulses and begin to be the master of your life force. When you're ruled by sexual impulses, you're essentially living from a place of scarcity. You're constantly seeking something outside yourself to feel complete, fulfilled, powerful. You're operating from a paradigm of lack. When you learn to transmute sexual energy, you develop an identity of abundance. You become someone who possesses inner resources, who has energy to give rather than just receive, who operates from a position of strength instead of weakness. This shift in identity affects everything. How you walk, how you talk, how you present yourself to the world, how you make decisions, how you face challenges, how you relate to opportunities. Napoleon Hill observed that this shift in identity was often more important than any specific technique or strategy. When you genuinely see yourself as someone who possesses inner power, you naturally act in ways that manifest that power externally. But let's get specific about how to implement this transformation in your daily life. Because Napoleon Hill always emphasized practical application over abstract theory. First, you must develop awareness of your current patterns. Start observing when you feel sexual urges, what triggers them, how you typically respond. Do this without judgment. Simply observe and note. Second, you must create what Napoleon Hill called a defined plan to redirect sexual energy. Identify specific activities that can serve as outlets for this energy. Creative projects, physical exercise, intense learning, productive work. Third, you must practice what he called auto-suggestion, consciously reprogramming your thought patterns about sexual energy. Instead of seeing sexual urges as something that must be immediately satisfied, start seeing them as indicators that powerful energy is available for redirection. Fourth, you must develop what Napoleon Hill called applied willpower, the ability to consciously choose your actions instead of automatically reacting to impulses. This is a muscle that strengthens with use. Fifth, you must surround yourself with influences that support your transformation. This includes books, people, environments that reinforce your new patterns instead of sabotaging them. But here's something absolutely crucial. You must approach this as a scientific experiment, not a moral crusade. Test the principles, measure the results, adjust your approach based on what works. Napoleon Hill was a pragmatist. He wasn't interested in theory that didn't produce measurable results. He wanted to know, does this work? Does it produce the promised results? Does it create real and lasting change? And the answer, based on his extensive research, was a definitive yes. Men who learned to transmute sexual energy experienced measurable improvements in energy, focus, creativity, personal magnetism, financial success, and overall life satisfaction. But they also faced significant challenges. Modern society is structured to drain sexual energy. You're constantly bombarded with images, messages, and opportunities that arouse sexual impulses. Furthermore, you've probably developed deep neurological patterns over years of automatic responses to these impulses. Changing these patterns requires consistent and intelligent dedication. Here's how Napoleon Hill recommended addressing these challenges. First, acknowledge that you're swimming against the current of the dominant culture. Most people around you are wasting sexual energy and don't understand what you're trying to achieve. Second, Find or create a support system of like-minded individuals. Napoleon Hill emphasized the power of what he called a mastermind, association with other people committed to growth and achievement. Third, develop specific strategies for dealing with temptations and setbacks. Instead of trying to be perfect, plan for challenges and have contingency plans ready. Fourth, keep your focus on the benefits you're creating instead of what you're giving up. Constantly remind yourself that you're trading momentary pleasure for lasting power. Fifth, be patient with the process. Napoleon Hill observed that real changes often take months or years to solidify. You're rebuilding fundamental neurological patterns, not just changing superficial behaviors. Now let's explore something few discuss: how sexual transmutation affects your relationship with risk, with challenges, with the ability to pursue ambitious goals. Men who waste sexual energy tend to avoid risks, seek comfort and security, choose the path of least resistance. They lack the energy or confidence needed to pursue goals that require courage and persistence. Men who learn to transmute sexual energy develop what Napoleon Hill called confidence-based courage. They're willing to take calculated risks, face significant challenges, persist through difficult periods. This happens because they have access to a source of energy and confidence that doesn't depend on external circumstances. They know they possess inner resources to handle whatever situation they might encounter. Napoleon Hill observed that all great entrepreneurs and innovators possessed this quality. They had the courage to pursue visions that others considered impossible, the persistence to continue when others gave up, and the energy to maintain intense effort for prolonged periods. And here's something fascinating. This courage wasn't reckless or foolhardy. It was courage based on real self-knowledge, on confidence derived from genuine inner mastery. They took risks because they knew they could handle the consequences, not because they were unaware of the dangers. Let's now delve into how sexual transmutation affects your ability to form and maintain deep and meaningful relationships. Because Napoleon Hill discovered that mastery of sexual energy dramatically improves the quality of all relationships. When you're a slave to sexual impulses, you tend to see other people through the lens of your own needs. You seek validation, approval, fulfillment through others. Your relationships are based on need rather than choice, on taking rather than giving. When you learn to transmute sexual energy, you relate to others from a place of abundance. You have internal energy and resources to offer. You choose relationships based on compatibility and mutual growth, not on neediness or dependence. This is especially important in romantic relationships. A man who masters his sexual energy doesn't need a woman to feel complete. He chooses a woman to share his completeness. That's a completely different foundation for a relationship. Women instinctively respond to this difference. They're drawn to men who possess abundant internal energy because it represents security, protection, and the potential for joint growth. Napoleon Hill observed that men who practiced sexual transmutation tended to have deeper, more fulfilling, and longer-lasting relationships. They attracted higher-quality partners and maintained connections based on mutual respect and admiration. But this applies to all relationships, not just romantic ones. Friendships, business partnerships, family, relationships, all improve when you operate from a position of inner abundance instead of scarcity. Let's now explore the deeper spiritual dimension of sexual transmutation. Because Napoleon Hill, while a practical man, recognized that there were aspects of this practice that transcended the purely material. He observed that men who learned to transmute sexual energy frequently reported experiences they described as a deeper spiritual connection, enhanced intuition, and access to levels of creativity they didn't know they possessed. This makes sense when you understand that sexual energy is nature's fundamental creative force. When you learn to consciously work with this force, you naturally align yourself with creative processes that operate on scales far larger than your individual life. You begin to feel that you're part of something bigger, that you have a specific role to play in the grand scheme of things. You develop what Napoleon Hill called cosmic consciousness, a perception of your connection to universal forces. This isn't vague mysticism, It produces measurable, practical results. You develop sharper intuition about people and situations. You have creative insights that seem to come out of nowhere. You attract opportunities and resources in ways that seem synchronistic. Napoleon Hill believed this was one of the highest forms of human intelligence, the ability to access wisdom that transcends what your conscious mind can normally achieve. But here's what's crucial. You can't force these states. They emerge naturally when you create the right conditions through consistent practice of sexual transmutation and character development. Let's now address something many men ask. How does this affect your actual sex life? How does the transmutation of sexual energy impact your capacity for physical intimacy and sexual satisfaction? The answer may surprise you. Men who practice sexual transmutation frequently report a dramatic improvement in their sex lives, not a decline. They develop greater control, more sensitivity, and the ability to give and receive pleasure in deeper ways. This happens because they're no longer wasting sexual energy on solitary escapes. When they choose to be sexually intimate, they bring accumulated and refined energy to the experience. They are present, conscious, and capable of genuine connection. Furthermore, they develop a magnetism that makes them more attractive to higher quality partners. They attract women who are capable of real intimacy, not just superficial physical satisfaction. Napoleon Hill observed that men who mastered sexual energy tended to have more satisfying sexual relationships precisely because they approach sex from a place of abundance instead of scarcity, of consciousness instead of compulsion. Now let's explore how to implement these principles in a practical and sustainable way in your daily life. Because all the knowledge in the world is useless without consistent application. First, you must create what Napoleon Hill called a mental environment that supports your transformation. This means eliminating or minimizing exposure to stimuli that arouse unnecessary sexual impulses, pornography, sexualized images, energy-draining conversations. Second, you must develop daily routines that channel sexual energy into productive activities. Intense physical exercise in the morning, creative work when your energy is high, challenging projects that require intense focus. Third, you must practice what Napoleon Hill called thought concentration, the ability to maintain intense mental focus for extended periods. This strengthens your ability to consciously direct energy instead of being driven by it. Fourth, you must develop the habit of regularly asking yourself, how can I use the energy I'm feeling right now to create something valuable? This transforms automatic impulses into conscious choices. Fifth, you must measure and track your progress. Keep a record of your energy levels, productivity, mood, and relationships. Napoleon Hill emphasized the importance of objective feedback to maintain motivation and make necessary adjustments. But here's something absolutely crucial. You must approach this as a lifestyle, not a quick fix. Napoleon Hill observed that the benefits of sexual transmutation accumulate over time and become more powerful the more consistently you practice. In the first few days or weeks, you may not notice dramatic changes. It may even be harder than before, as you struggle against established patterns. But if you persevere, you will begin to experience levels of energy, clarity, and personal power you didn't know were possible. Let's now explore some of the most common obstacles you'll face and how to overcome them. Because Napoleon Hill was a careful student not only of success, but also of the causes of failure. The first obstacle is social isolation. When you stop wasting sexual energy, you may find you have less in common with men who are still stuck in old patterns. You may feel isolated or misunderstood. The solution is to consciously find other men who share similar values of growth and self-mastery. This may require effort, but it's essential for long-term success. The second hurdle is societal pressure to conform to typical masculine behaviors. Our culture often equates masculinity with sexual indulgence, and you might face ridicule or pressure to abandon your practice. The solution is to develop inner confidence based on the results you're seeing in your own life. When you experience the benefits of sexual transmutation firsthand, it becomes easier to resist external pressure. The third hurdle is the tendency to turn this into a religion instead of a practice. Some men become rigid or obsessive about sexual transmutation, losing sight of the fact that it's a tool for creating a better life, not an end in itself. The solution is to stay focused on the practical results you want to create. More energy, better focus, improved relationships, greater success. Use sexual transmutation as a means to these ends, not the end itself. The fourth hurdle is perfectionism. Many men believe they must completely master sexual energy before seeing any benefits. When they have slip-ups or setbacks, they see themselves as total failures. The solution is to understand that mastery is a process, not a state. Every conscious choice you make strengthens your ability for the next choice. Progress, not perfection, is the goal. The fifth hurdle is losing sight of the bigger purpose. Without a compelling reason to transmute sexual energy, it's easy to abandon the practice when it becomes challenging. The solution is to consciously connect your practice of sexual transmutation with your most important goals. Constantly remind yourself that you're doing this to become more powerful, more effective, more free. Now let's explore Napoleon Hill's perspective on how sexual transmutation relates to creating a lasting legacy. Because he observed that men who mastered this practice tended to create impact that lasted far beyond their own lifetimes. When you squander sexual energy on fleeting pleasures, you're essentially living for the immediate present. You're consuming resources instead of building something lasting. When you transmute sexual energy, you naturally begin to think in terms of the long term. You develop the patience to build things that may take years or decades to fully manifest. You begin to ask, what can I create that will have lasting value? How can I use my energy to build something that will benefit others long after I'm gone? Napoleon Hill observed that all great legacy builders possessed this long-term orientation, and that it always stemmed from some form of mastery over immediate impulses in favor of larger visions. They understood that energy is finite, and that every unit of energy wasted on immediate gratification is a unit unavailable for building something permanent. Let's now delve into the deeper, more transformative dimension of this entire journey. How sexual transmutation connects you with your true masculine nature, your archetypal strength, your power as a conscious man in this world. For millennia, cultures around the world recognized that masculine sexual energy, when properly cultivated and directed, was one of the most powerful forces on earth. Warriors, sages, leaders, creators, all knew that mastery of this energy was fundamental to extraordinary achievements. But our modern culture has disconnected us from this ancient wisdom. We've been taught to see sexual energy as something to be constantly satisfied, consumed, wasted. We've been conditioned to believe that suppressing any impulse is unhealthy, that immediate gratification is a right. The result is a generation of men who never experience their true power, who never access their deepest capabilities, who live a fraction of what's possible. Napoleon Hill was rediscovering and codifying wisdom that had been known for millennia, that sexual energy is sacred, that it is the force of creation itself, and that learning to consciously work with this force is what separates ordinary men from extraordinary men. When you stop wasting this energy and begin consciously cultivating it, you're not just optimizing your biology, you're reconnecting with ancient lineages of masculine power, with traditions of spiritual warriors who knew that inner mastery was the foundation of all outer mastery. You're joining the ranks of men throughout history who refused to be slaves to impulse, who chose to be masters of their own energies, who used that mastery to create, to lead, to elevate humanity. And here's the deepest truth that Napoleon Hill uncovered: when you master sexual energy, you're not just improving your life, you're fulfilling your destiny as a conscious man. You're becoming what you were always meant to be. You're awakening the inner warrior who doesn't fight external enemies, but who wins the most important battle of all, the battle for self-mastery. You're activating the inner king, who doesn't rule external subjects, but who reigns over his own impulses, emotions, and energies. You're unleashing the inner magician, who works not with tricks or illusions, but with real natural forces to create real change in the real world. You're expressing the inner lover, who doesn't merely seek physical pleasure, but who loves life with enough intensity to dedicate his energy to the creation of beauty, value, meaning. This is true sexual transmutation, not just redirecting energy, but awakening to your deeper nature as a conscious and powerful man. When you understand this, everything changes. You're no longer trying to control pesky impulses. You're cultivating the most sacred force within you. You're not denying yourself pleasure. You're choosing deeper and more lasting pleasures. You're not repressing your masculinity. You're elevating your masculinity to its highest potential. And here's what happens when you truly embody this truth. You become unstoppable. Not in an arrogant or aggressive way, but in a way that is simultaneously powerful and serene, focused and flexible, strong and wise. You cultivate what Napoleon Hill called silent power, a quality of presence that needs to prove nothing to anyone because it's grounded in genuine inner mastery. You become the kind of man other men instinctively respect, women naturally admire, and children intuitively trust. You have a choice now. You can continue as you have been, squandering the most powerful force within you, living a fraction of your potential, being a slave to impulses you don't even fully understand. Or you can take the first step on the most important journey any man can make, the journey back to your own power, back to your own strength, back to your own freedom. The choice is yours. But remember, every moment you wait is another moment. You're draining the energy you could be using to create the extraordinary life you deserve to live. The time to awaken is now. The time to reclaim your power is now. The time to become the man you were born to be is now. Napoleon Hill showed us the way. The wisdom is available. The only question that remains is, will you have the courage to follow it?